Cannot see the table. That's right. We'll make it work. Let's take that out of there. Trying to make it. I will figure it out. Good morning, friends. How are you? Welcome to Paranormal Witchcraft LLC. I am Tobias Josephson. Welcome back to Paranormal Laboratory. This is Paranormal Witchcraft, and this is the channel where we approach the paranormal differently. For those that are new here, we're lighting some incense. All right, well, I was trying to get this to where you guys could see what was going on, but that's not going to work. So we'll shift gears here. Since it's not going to work, I have to bring the computer back down to the table. Because what I wanted is this to be looking down, and it's not doing that. So that's all right. That being said, good morning. It bothers me that I don't get the angles I want, but I will get over it. So, as far as I understand it, this is probably one of the biggest problems that paranormal, any channel probably has. So, let's turn this to where the light is better. There we go. We'll just do it like normal. So now you're on the table, whereas you were up there, and I wanted it to be more of a bird's eye view, and it didn't work. So that's all right. It probably just means I need more equipment, right? So good morning. Welcome back to Paranormal Witchcraft LLC. That's better. I like it better when I can see my face too. I'm sure you guys are getting the glare. Welcome back to Paranormal Laboratory. I am Tobias Josephson, and once again, this is Paranormal Witchcraft LLC. This is where we approach the paranormal on this channel differently. We use containment over chaos, evidence over egos. Fear doesn't just affect investigations, it rewrites what most people think they're experiencing. We were talking a little bit last night about the UFO thing, etc., etc., etc. I went back and watched that podcast, and it was exactly what I thought it was, Chris. It was a viewpoint of the vice presidents, like I thought, and so, which means, it's his personal opinion. So what if the most dangerous thing in a paranormal investigation isn't the spirits or the demons that people say you're going to be hunting or investigating, but it's your personal brain trying to make sense of all the fear if you're new to the paranormal communities? Because once that fear kicks in, and if you're brand new to the paranormal, you're not seeing things clearly anymore. You're going to be caught up in the environment, and before you know it, you're going to be caught up in escalation. Once fear kicks in, you're not seeing clearly anymore. Fear changes everybody's behavior. It's involuntary. Body takes over. Have you ever been sure you saw something and then questioned it later? Yes, I have. Many times. So that being said, we're going to turn our friend on here. And just set him in the chair next to me. I don't know if you can see him or not. I think you can. Yep, a little bit.
Yes, yes.
Oh, you hush. So, You ever seen something you thought you saw, and then the more you thought about it later, you found yourself to be mistaken? Yes, I have. Did the event change, or did your interpretation change? Well, in my specific example, my interpretation personally changed. I don't know about everybody else that was there. The event continued. There was some more evidence captured during that investigation. But all in all, what it did is it changed my personal interpretation. Once I was able to calm myself down, fear doesn't just amplify a paranormal environment. Fear doesn't just amplify a paranormal investigation. Fear doesn't just amplify anyone's paranormal research or storytelling. It changes how people interpretate, that's not a word, interpret reality in that moment. So we have to be careful on how we're showing others, because the brain doesn't wait for clarity. It starts filling the gaps without our permission. Hopefully you guys had a good night. I had a late night. I was up till about 4 in the morning for whatever reason. Good morning. How are you? It is a beautiful day out there. It seems to be, anyways. And you're getting the benefit of hearing my still wake up voice. Oh, let's put our friend right there. And you can see the light, and you'll probably see it move. So when your brain starts filling in the gaps, shadows become figures. We've said this many times in many ways. Sounds become voices or communication. Movement becomes present, and things are now chasing you. And fear forces your brain to come to conclusions much faster than the truth can actually form. Real investigation requires patience. Fear demands immediate answers. That's the big difference there. Fear forces conclusions faster than truth can form. Real investigation requires patience. Fear demands immediate answers. That's the huge difference that we're trying to talk about this week with fear. Is most people are letting fear take over. Many of them don't even realize it. Real investigation requires more patience versus fear demands immediate answers. You don't just experience the moment, you're rewriting it as it's happening because your brain is trying to fill in the gaps faster than the truth can be formed. That's called escalation. What you remember is often louder, closer, more intense than what actually occurred. Let's repeat that slowly. What you remember after is often louder, closer, and more intense than what actually occurred. We're asking people to really dig deep here and really think hard. One person says, "Did you hear that?" And now 5 people says they experienced it within 2 minutes. We were talking about this last night. If I didn't experience it, I'm not going to go, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." I don't know why you would do that. All right. Fear is one of the fastest contagions on the planet. It will get more people to stand in line than anything else. One person says, "Did you hear that?" Now you have 5 to 10 people within 2 minutes that all believe, and only one person experienced it. Because that fear just jumps throughout the room. And that's the time you need to observe, all right, and calm yourself. But most people don't do that, they don't catch it. So let me challenge you this morning. If you experience changes, depending on how afraid you are, then how much of your investigation is actually credible, validated, or reliable? Hi, baby. Okay. Then how much of your investigation is actually reliable? Fear doesn't just create reactions, it creates narrations, it creates false certainty, it creates storytelling. The facts get mixed up with the emotional tones, all right? Your brain filling in the gaps starts storytelling. Fear doesn't just create the reactions, it creates false everything. Tonight, 8 p.m., all right, we'll be talking about it more live. We'll be testing it live. Now, notice the device is right next to me. You guys can't see it, but it is. It's literally right next to me, sitting on the table, nice and flat. All right. It's got a coffee cup next to it. It's got the stack of papers next to that. And it's got me in front of it. At Paranormal Witchcraft LLC, we don't just judge or investigate environments. We investigate people's perceptions. We investigate people's emotional reactions. Your perception is always part of the evidence. Your perception is always part of the information we're going to be using. If you control your psychological state and then the results change, then your perception was part of the investigation. Makes sense now that you stop and think about it, right? Same environments, same devices. We test ourselves here on this channel. Because if perception is unstable, meaning we're unsure, then the entire investigation is built on something that can shift because we're not entirely sure of what we've caught yet. If your perception can change, then can't your evidence change as well? I think so. Your evidence could change as well. The brain doesn't wait for clarity. What you remember, louder, closer, more intense. Use the example, somebody says something like, did you hear that? Did you feel that? And now the whole room experiences the same thing, but it only started with one person. And maybe only one person experienced it because the fear is there. Everybody in reaction, even subconsciously, even inadvertently, could be now experiencing it. So that's why we challenge you. If the experience changes, depending on how afraid you are, then how much of your investigation remains reliable. Because once you let fear take control of you, you're no longer investigating. And if you can control your psychological state, and then the results change, that's the whole point of these experiments, then your perception was part of the evidence. And at Paranormal Witchcraft LLC, we don't just judge, why do I keep saying that? Because I'm tired. We don't just investigate environments. We don't just investigate locations. We're investigating ourselves as well. We're investigating the perception. We're investigating the observance techniques. We're investigating the patterns we're trying to capture. Because if that perception is unstable while we investigate it, then our investigation might be built on something that can change. And that's an important point to come to. Because if your perception can change, then your evidence can too. That's where all the problems come in. So, my friend, how was your night? Hopefully everything was good for you. I will slowly be coming back to social media. I'm sorry that it's so difficult for me, but I just cringe now. But truth be told, It's not that bad. I'll probably share this live or maybe tonight's live. Maybe I'll share the experiments at night that we do, where it's more dark and it's more exciting for people, because these morning ones seem to be a little too boring for people, except for people like you, or people that can catch us on a lunch break. So, and again, I don't believe in all those bells and whistles. It takes hours and hours and hours of effort every single day to make that happen before you even turn the mics on and get on camera here. And so, if you've watched Phil and others long enough, it takes them like an hour to get ready, turn all the lights on. That's a lot of work. All right. Especially if I'm doing 2 lives a day, that's energy and time I can't afford to put into this right now. And so this is where we have to be more patient, etc. And I'll find different techniques and tactics to use to get people's attention than the bells and whistles and the thumbnails where everybody has to look like they're going to crap their pants if something doesn't happen. The usuals, because it's the easiest. It's the point of, it's the easiest path, the straight line. So people go for it, and AI makes things easier and makes it more exciting. But it's also a lot of effort, and it means I would get nothing else done if I spent all my time doing that. I don't have the amount of time or resources to produce something that's more podcast level. And so until that happens, we're stuck here, which is what most view us as, is probably amateur mode. And that's fine with me. I mean, we're not, but that's what most people's perception will be, because they won't take the time long enough to stick around. So that's where the race gets tricky. But that being said, my friends, tonight we will experiment once again. An investigation of the paranormal is, if we think about it logically and strip back all the bells and whistles and the fancy words and the logistics, it really is experimentation. We are trying to figure out what is on this, what's the right way to say it? We're trying to figure out what is around us. What is this phenomena that we just can't figure out with certainty yet what it is? Are they angels? Are they demons? Are they Anunnaki? Are they interdimensional beings? Are they time travelers from the future? Are they different species? Etc., etc., etc. All right. There's so many different forms of the metaphysical, the paranormal, and the supernatural now, that we have to stop and think about what we're doing essentially, what we all came to these realms for. And we came to these realms because we had questions about the world, about our histories, about our past as humans. And we can't forget that we are all here asking similar questions in different ways. And that's all it really is. The bells and whistles, the thumbnails, that's great. That's awesome. But when you strip all that away, what do you have? You have human beings like myself and like Chris and like others that are really just trying to ask deeper, darker questions to get the people who think that the illusion of community right now is what they want. Because that is, if you follow these things, the 5th seal of the 7 seals. Look it up. That's where I believe humanity is at right now. We have 2 more seals to go. That's how bad the world is. We're at the point where I believe we have broken a few seals, all right, and the apocalypse won't be as Western religion says it will. It'll be a little different. It'll be internal. It'll affect humans differently. Won't be as exciting. Won't have as many effects to it like the 4 horsemen, etc. A little different interpretation of it, but when you look at it, it looks a lot like where humanity is right now. We've broken 4 seals, and now the 5th, where we have this sense of community all over the world, which, by the way, they're referring to the internet communities, where people now have these huge places, huge groups of people, and they all have this sense of belonging. But it's not really a sense of belonging, because what they are is they're groups of people that no longer listen to the world. They all believe one thing, and the rest of the world isn't allowed to believe anything different. I believe that is talking about one of those seals. Look it up. It's pretty wild when you start looking at things like that in the old ancient texts. The versions of Revelations, the versions of the Apocalypse. And some of it talks about how humans, us, we will be our own downfall. And if we look at places like social media and much of what happens on the internet, it looks very similar. It looks very much like what they might have been trying to tell us back then to watch out for. And here humanity is ignoring the world and in love with the false deities that we call the internet and social media, where that huge sense of communal belonging is now, where everybody has this false communal, egotistical community they all belong to. It does reference things like even the higher ups in the religious worlds are the people to start watching out for, because the corruption will come from within the planet, from within those religious sects, specifically the leaders that the billions of people look up to. It's pretty wild if you look at it. All right. Makes you really stop and go, I wonder if that's what's happening. It's not necessarily pestilence or war or famine. We're beyond that now. Pretty trippy when you start peeling it back and start trying to take a closer look at what's happening in the world, where people view what's being spewed across the internet is truth because their friends shared it, etc., etc. That false belief, everything has truth to it, environment, without prior investigation. I believe that guy too. Let's go join them. Makes sense if you start thinking about it. I don't know. I could be right. I could be wrong. But it's an interesting question to ponder. When you turn on the mainstream and you look at what's going on, most of you should be shaking your head. But we should all be taking a closer look at ourselves, and we're not. We just continue our days scrolling, feeding our brains and our minds and our hearts with crap that doesn't matter. We spend hours on apps like TikTok doing what? What is it exactly you're doing for hours and hours and hours? Think about it. You're doing nothing. You're not getting anything accomplished. You're not moving. You're sedentary, and it's easy. That's why social media is so hard to break. All right. Think about it. That's a valid question. Do you think we've broken some of the seals already? Do you think the apocalypse has started? Great questions, aren't they? Do we think the Antichrist is here? Who is it? Or an even trippier question, what is the Antichrist? Could it be AI and technology? Ooh. Kind of makes sense if you think about it. It would be the easiest form of control. Everybody in the world wants to have a social media presence. Everybody in the world has to have a social media presence because that's just how the world works right now. Nobody cares about going outside and knocking on my door and shaking my hand and going, hi, you're Tobias. It's so good to meet you in person. Do you see what we're getting at? How do we know this isn't it? And for 20 years, we've walked right into the internet's hands. And the internet all along could be a form
Yes.
Something
Yes.
like the Antichrist would use to control humanity, because it's this easy. It's like taking candy from babies. There's nothing we could do to ignore the temptation of the internet. Think about it. We can't go a day, a moment without relying on technology. Why is that? Why is it everything we do has to be revolving around new technologies? And most of us just go, well, I don't know what they're doing to it, but it looks cool. Let's go do it. Okay. So everyone does it. All right. It makes sense if you think about it. If you think long and hard and deep, like if you were going to control this planet and you were going to take over humanity, how would you do it? What would be the easiest way to influence people? Their minds. Social media is a mindless thing that everybody feels they have to do, but you don't. The internet, but you don't. There's still libraries, there's still books. Do you guys understand what the older humans are trying to say now? Just because the rest of the world is going that way, how do we know it's the safest choice for humanity? If you look closer at AI and stuff, you'll see a lot of people raising eyebrows like, I don't know. I don't know if we should be going there so fast. I don't know if that's the wisest direction to take humanity, especially when we're still using fossil fuels. Like, a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense. And most humans don't even stop to ask why. You just go along with it because it looks exciting, it looks enticing. But remember, try not to judge a book by its cover, because what you may find may not be what you thought it was. Makes your brain melt, kind of, doesn't it, when you start thinking like that? But I am one of the rare humans who believe that there is something to all that. I don't know what it is, but I just have a knowing that this push that humanity seems to think is the greatest thing since sliced bread, there are humans out there who just disagree, because there's no responsibility being taught right now about it. People aren't smart enough to get informed. People aren't smart enough to take closer looks. People aren't smart enough to stop and think that what they're jumping into could be a mental trap. All right? That's probably why it's so hard to break social media apps. They want to make it addicting so people feel they have to have it. You don't have to have a social media presence to be a happy person. It's not a popularity contest. That's something I've said thousands of times. Social media is not a popularity contest. It was a way to interact with family and friends from all over the world. That is the only reason the internet was really started. Well, besides the research purposes. It could store lots and lots of data. We could stop writing shit down and getting cramps, and it made life a little easier. But look at where we are 20 years later. We've completely twisted and completely distorted what social media was started for. And then we look at the way people are using the internet. There's scammers, there's trolls, there's fraudulent people out there who make profiles on social media and they target people psychologically and monetarily. That is not what social media and the internet was ever meant for. So if there's humans out there doing those two things, then you look at the questions I just presented, and then it really does make you go, what if Tobias is right? What if there is a control factor to social media and people haven't realized it? Because it's that addicting for a reason, right? What did you do before the internet? That's one question that seems to trip most people up these days because most people aren't Zennials like me. See, I was born in 76, which is in between the boomers and the millennials. So I remember technology going from 8 track, all right, to the beginnings of where we are today, which makes me uniquely perceptive, meaning I've seen changes that other generations haven't seen. And that's where the generation gap, you'll hear those words. That's what that means. It means the generation below or after us refuses to understand because they didn't grow up with it or use it. And so, you know, they're not aware of it. And so it has no place in their world. And so if they never use something, all right, you might disagree on some things because one person grew up on 8 tracks, the other one grew up with the iPod Shuffle. All right. And so it's kind of like a blissful generational ignorance where we just don't understand the generations around us. All right. Because we grew up in completely different environments, much like paranormal investigating. All right. That's how deep I think. I know it might make your brain hurt sometimes, but that's the type of human being I am. I think deeper than most people because I just see people thinking superficially all the time. And superficial thinking only works in the here and now. It doesn't work in my future, and my future has big plans. I can't think superficially because I won't get anywhere, right? If you just stay stuck in the here and now, which you are supposed to, but not in the way most people think. Always stay in the moment, but don't get stuck in a moment. We were talking last night about how your behavior, your psychology can affect the environment of paranormal investigation. If you've had a shitty day and you're not someone like Matt or myself, and you're not smart enough to ground yourself, meditate for a few minutes, calm yourself back down so you can go in there as lead investigator and run the show. We are here to remain in control during investigations. We are here to remain respectful. So, my friends, have yourselves a beautiful afternoon. It does look like it's going to be a little nicer out. Good morning, Truth Tarot Readings. Ooh, I like that. So, have yourselves a beautiful afternoon. We'll see you tonight at 8, where we will test the paranormal. We will test ourselves again. We will experiment with paranormal investigation once again. So we will see you guys at 8 p.m. tonight. Thank you, Truth Tarot Readings, for dropping by and saying hi. I love that. Chris, awesome. We will see you tonight. And that being said, I'm going to go eat breakfast. Have yourself a beautiful afternoon. I love each and every one of you.